Okay, call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Dave?
Here.
Otis?
Here.
Nancy?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
Sally?
Present.
Tor? Richard?
Here. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I so move.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Do we have any amendments to the minutes from the previous meeting? Previous two meetings, I should say. Hearing none, do we have a, yes?
Actually, I do. Under public comments on February 6th, line 4, I think, what the mayor was asking is for information to be disseminated, not assimilated to the public.
Okay.
And then also, under the Severson variance, I believe the motion was for the variance of the 10-foot side yard setback, but not the 35% lot coverage. That wasn't included in the variance that you gave.
That is correct.
So that needs to be struck from the motion.
We have a motion to amend and approve.
So move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, do we have any public comments pertaining to matters not appearing on the public hearing or consent calendar? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. There's no items there, so we'll go to public hearings. We have a public hearing for an application from St. Catherine's Catholic Church for a variance from the 10-foot side yard setback requirement and the 20-foot or 10-foot front yards or side yard setback and the 20-foot front yard setback requirement for the property located at 103 North 3rd Street. This variance would allow the applicant to construct a open-sided roofed structure to prevent the existing grotto 6.5 feet from the side yard property line and 2.5 feet from the front yard property line. Do we have any public testimony? Please step to the microphone, state your name.
My name is Marge Joynes, and I live right next to the Catholic Church. And I would recommend that you grant the request. That's why I'm here. I support what they're wanting to do.
Thank you. Do we have any other testimony?
My name is John Koenigs, and represent the St. Catherine's Catholic Church and the author of this request for variance. I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have. I can give you a little bit of background of the history of why the grotto was placed so close to the property lines in the first place. I noticed in my photo journal that the property corner was on site at the time, and quite frankly, my recollection was it was a stone structure, and it didn't require any application, or there was no concern at the time, as I recall, in 2004 when we began the construction of that project. It's come to my attention since then, and looking at the church properties, that when you look at where the properties line up, where we've encroached with the rock wall, as you look at the pictures, or if you've been to the site, you can see that there was fill placed in that property, shortly after the right-of-way itself, the 50-foot right-of-way was vacated, and a portion of it went to the St. Catherine's and a portion went to the daycare center, with a 10-foot corridor allocated for public access for school children primarily to walk back and forth through that vacated right-of-way. So the public right-of-way is still there. And the grotto itself is about 6.5 as it shows on the plat from that line. During the course of the request, it was by the local parish priest at the time, Father Mike Swarty, that asked to build a grotto. And so we proceeded to fulfill his desires to have that grotto built, thinking that it was going to be pretty much as a stone structure. It was going to be impervious to the elements. It wasn't until, probably weeks after we completed it, the mason that assisted us said, well, you know that you're going to have to put a preservative on this stone structure on a regular basis to preserve it. He said the elements, the way it's constructed, the water will ultimately permeate through and destroy the structure. So it should really be covered. And I had I even thought of that or even contemplated that, that whole structure wouldn't be located where it was at. Having said that, it has not created a problem. If the variance is not granted, we have a plastic cover on it now, and that could suffice. But it doesn't get used as much for gathering, a church gathering, as what it was built for celebration of various services and such. And so it is very desirable on the part of the parish council and our priest and bishop to see that we protect that structure. So we hope you'll look favorably upon it. If you have any further questions, I'll set the audience. And I do have pictures of the structure after a period of 6 years without a cover on it. It started growing moss and the water started leaking through, and so the actual prognostication by the mason said that it's going to deteriorate, and it began to do that. So we put first a blue tarp and now a white cover on it. So I hope you'll favorably consider our request. And I'll leave it at that for right now. Thank you.
Yes.
May I ask Dawn a question?
Yes, Don, please.
So the proposed shed roof is going to come out like 28 feet?
Yes.
So it eliminates the parking lot?
No. No, the parking lot is not even, that's all right directly in front. The parking lot is to the left of that structure about, I'd say 15 feet from the corner. The whole parking lot is to your, as you're facing that, it's to your right. And that's probably about 35, 40 feet to the hall itself. So the parking lot is all wide open.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah. So it's trying to scale. I mean, the scale that's on there is correct.
I just didn't see the building in the scale drawing of where it is.
I didn't put the building in there. But if you look at your other maps that you have, should have within your packet a colored map that shows it in red the property of the church itself. I'll show you something.
This one? This little one?
The assembly here. So this is the vacated street right away here, and the parking lot and the hall sit in this area here. So there's about, probably at least 40, 45 feet between that and the hall itself.
Okay.
Any other questions? Discussion?
I own property nearby, and I don't have any problem with it. I don't see how it'll negatively affect property values in that area.
I don't have any problem, but I think maybe the best thing that the Children's Center and the Catholic Church should try and change their zoning to C1 commercial. And that would eliminate all the problems of having to come back every time you want to do something and get a variance. Because as long as both of those, essentially, I guess maybe in my view, they're commercial, semi-commercial endeavor, not, but however you want to call it. It just seems that that would be the best thing to do with both of those lots long-term, would to perhaps look at just seeing if you could change the zoning on it. That would eliminate the need for, I don't know whether this is a fourth variance and not very long.
Yes. Please.
I think Dave brings up an excellent point. My further observation, and as a person that does work around the church and have been for 40 years, I've discovered that the walkway that are on the church that provide access into the church are actually built on city property. And they're right along the sidewalk. And the parish council, under my advice, is considering covering those walkways. And I proposed, and I talked to Liz, the Cabrera, the other day, the planning, zoning, or the economic development director, community development director, about looking at the walkway that approaches the church itself and the front entrance and then the side entrance, about covering those walkways and actually moving them off the city property and moving them onto the church property where I can. And so I brought in a plan for that, and she said, well, that too will require variance. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. If he takes a rezoning, do we, the church, make that request for commercial zoning, or would that come from the planning commission?
No, you guys would have to make a request, bring it in front of the commission, and then we would, and then ultimately the assembly we can make a recommendation.
Sure.
But then it goes to the assembly, and then they would say yea or nay on it.
I think it makes make an excellent point there, and I would agree with you. And from the church's perspective, I think in their behalf, I could say yes, that would be a good thing. And I could approach or someone else can approach the children's center about that.
Assuming this new development code goes through, we're going to have to redraw the zoning maps anyway, or relabel everything. And I think that would be an excellent time to deal with the issue.
So what lead time would we need to do that? I mean, how long would
Liz,
it take?
when do you think you'd be working on the zoning maps?
Well, not until, if and when it is adopted
Yeah.
by the assembly. So there's not much point in
Yeah.
doing that until,
Yeah, so
probably not until next fall, I would think, 'cause I wouldn't.
Okay, well then, we're going to be ahead of the curve, because I'm going to come back with another variance for the walkway. We'd like to cover the walkways. It's hazardous. We have handicap access ramps for the elderly, and it's snow shoveling and details and sanding and all this. It's really become a problem for our church, and we'd like to address that. And I'm generally the one that does the construction or assists in the construction of these projects, so I'll come back with a variance. But I think you're right in the long run that we would be very supportive of doing that and assisting the child center as well in making that happen, so that we don't have to keep coming back for any of those reasons.
And then what I would suggest you also do is, survey your neighbors, your immediate neighbors, and let them know that because that's the main thing you need to do, is make sure everybody in the neighborhood's on board with it.
Well, would not the process be that, like they do with this variance, they'd be sent out to the people within a 600-foot
Yes,
radius?
right.
So rather than us as individuals, would that not come from the borough itself to each resident, so they know what we're about, they could either speak for or against it?
Yes,
So
yeah, that's the process.
When I got your question, Dave, you were
Right.
asking me to go from neighbor to neighbor, and I would say, I don't think that would be necessarily.
Well, your immediate neighbors, the ones that have adjacent property.
Okay, fine. I have
I mean,
no
just,
problem with that.
I mean, you don't have to do that, but I just, just find out if, everybody's, because it's a political process. You got to come with us, and then we say yea or nay or give a recommendation,
sure.
and then it goes to the assembly. Because we can't decide, because the problem is with the variance is according to the way the code as it exists right now, the way it's interpreted, we can't approve another variance. So that's, to me, it seems like, particularly if you have more projects in store in the future, that would be the way to deal with it. Yeah.
Whatever.
And then I'm sure you can talk to Liz, and I know you're grimming. But, I mean, can I ask Liz, would that solve a lot of the issues with this long-term?
Well, with commercial property, as you know, there aren't any setback requirements.
Correct.
The Children's Center is zoned public use, but public use takes on the residential setback requirements. So it really didn't help them any in terms of using the majority of their property. So I think that's the case under the current code too. So something like commercial is the only one that would really allow them to expand into those setbacks.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions of me?
You, Richard? No. No, okay. Any more discussion?
I'm not sure anybody made a motion and a second?
We haven't made a motion or second yet.
It was just public comments on it.
Do we want to do it right now, or do we want to do it later? Oh, we got the,
Why don't we go ahead and do it and get it out of the way?
okay.
I move to accept the variance request as received.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
If we're going to do it. Liz, you guys, recommendation was to deny a variance from the 20-foot front yard setback and 10-foot side yard setback requirements. Basically, just because, could you explain a little bit more why?
The only reason is we couldn't figure out where it met the criteria for number one.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you as the commit, if you're going to approve this, you need to come up with something to fill in that number one criteria to approve it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I mean, that's the only problem I'm having, is trying to figure out, I mean, our hands are kind of constrained by the existing code. I think we should approve this, but like I said, I think the better option would be for long-term for this property to try and get a zoning change on it. And then they wouldn't have to run into these issues all the time. I have no idea what the assembly would feel about that. I mean, they haven't been very at least while I've been here, they haven't approved any zoning changes, so I don't know whether they'd be willing to do that or not. So, in light of that, I'd support this variance, but I think for their long-term interests, it'd be best if they just try to get the zoning changed.
Yeah, the only physical circumstances I see that warrant this is the fact that the grotto needs to be protected. And I don't think that really qualifies because of the size of the lot. I don't know how we could phrase it in such a way that we could approve it. I'd like to. But does anybody else have any suggestions?
I don't think the grotto counts as like a structure in itself, because of its size. Again, I'm in favor of approving it, but without something to put in number one, it's going to be tough.
There's no way that you can say just the fact that it's a stone structure can't really be moved easily.
Yeah, you're not going to move that.
Yeah, the problem is it's physical circumstances applicable to the property,
Property, not to the...
not to the structure.
Yeah.
I mean, not to the improvements on the property. If we did it based on the grotto being there, it being an existing structure that needs to be protected, we'd be in a rather gray area.
And the fact that the grotto doesn't count as a structure.
Right. You have any ideas, Dave?
Well, I mean, I don't know how we can. I mean, we can just say, yeah, we're gonna approve the variance, but we got to figure out reasons for it. I don't know how long the process would be to go through the process to try and get a zoning change. I don't know whether this is something you guys want to do right away, because I'm sure to get a zoning change could take a while. You know what I'm saying? Personally, I would look favorably upon a zoning change. I think that's what needs to happen. Then you're not going to have this issue going forward in the future. No. I mean, we've recommended zoning changes before, and they've been denied by the assembly. So, yeah. So to be honest with you, yeah, no, there's no assurances. I understand that.
Two of your adjacent property owners are in this room. And I'm pretty sure Marge isn't going to oppose it, and I wouldn't oppose a zoning change.
In the past, if my memory is correct, the reason the zoning wasn't approved in the past by the council was that some of the owners in the area didn't want the change.
Right.
In this case, I think all the owners in the area are fine with it.
Yeah, that's why I kind of recommended you kind of query your neighbors ahead of time on that. Your immediate neighbors. No.
No.
I make a motion, well, we've already got a motion on the table.
You can amend it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we make it fit. Liz,
Yeah.
how do we make this fit, or can we?
I've always seen you make it fit in the past.
Okay,
How's that?
okay.
Well, the grotto is not a structure, what is it?
Well, it's the only one in town, so it's unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's landscaping.
Is it a piece of the property?
Landscaping?
Yeah.
Well, is it a piece of the property? So if it's a piece of the property, then the only way
It's
to
a
cover
neat-
it is this.
It's a unique feature of the property.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I could go with that.
And it's not a
Okay.
building being erected, it's a shed.
Right.
Yeah.
As a direct neighbor, I would be,
Yes, state your name.
Matthew Garretts, as a direct neighbor, I would only be disappointed because it would take away my view of the grotto every day when I walk out my front door and right through the trees, I get to see it, and it is amazing. But I was just thinking maybe you could make it fit by, the ground around it is settled, quite a bit, especially between there and the bulkhead. I don't know if an existing roof or putting a roof over it would help alleviate, maybe that rock wall might crumble onto the sidewalk someday if that roof wasn't there. But as the lawn mowing technician, I can tell you that that lawn has dropped probably a good foot or 8 inches in some places. So maybe by shedding water off to the side, directing water off the lot, it would alleviate any settling, which would maybe therefore someday erode the rock wall and take out a small child on its way to the children's center,
So it would be erosion control?
perhaps.
Thank you, Matt.
I'll call for the question and we'll just figure it out when we get to that part.
Okay. Yeah.
Kelly,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Okay, so what are we going to do for the findings of fact on 1?
Hey, I can go with erosion control. No,
If we call the grotto a feature of the property,
That's what I wanted.
yeah. Yeah, let's just call it a feature of the property that needs to be
Protected.
protected. And the only way to feasibly do it is to
Put up a roof.
construct a roof over it.
construct a roof which will be in the right of way.
As testified earlier, the right-of-way is no longer existing.
Oh,
The only right-of-way is a
sorry.
10-foot strip through that right-of-way. The property that all sits on is on church property. That has been dedicated to the Catholic Church.
It's just the setbacks. where-
Yeah, the setback, yeah.
Is a setback.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I'll stand
We're
corrected.
not on anybody's property
Yeah.
as far as the side setback. It's
Right.
that front setback where the rock got placed against the sidewalk.
Right, okay.
That is on city property. Okay, for clarification.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
So Karen, did you get that? Okay. Dave, do you want to state that?
The characteristics of the grotto require a wood structure to be constructed to protect it, noting that the structure will be in the setback.
Should we add anything about no negative comments from the surrounding property owners?
I think we have to.
I don't think we need to.
Okay.
I think that's part of the record anyway, because
I don't have any here. I'm assuming none came in, but
We're done.
if there were any, then we would have them here.
yeah.
Okay, so that should conclude us, unless we have anything else that you need from us. Karen? Okay. Now we will open the public hearing for the proposed code. Do we have any members of the public who wish to testify as part of the public hearing on the new zoning code? Please come up to the microphone and state your name.
How you doing, guys? I'm Daniel Bird. I had a couple of questions here and looking through. I went onto the Bubble's website and downloaded all the things here. And on this personal warehouse, I noticed there is no size in this. Has that been adjusted yet to a maximum warehouse size?
There's a discussion in the amendments. Amendments 10 and 10A address the warehouse size.
Those I did not see. And I assume that this, I've been told two different things, so all we're voting on now is the changes to the wording in the code. We're not making any land changes for
No.
zoning, because that's going to come phase 2, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and just for the clarification, Amendment 10 is to limit the cumulative size of any accessory structures in the residential zone to 1,500 square feet. 10A is a variance, a variable change of that, to limit it to 20% of the total lot area on lots of 15,000 square feet or smaller, 15% of the total lot area on 15,001 to 40,000 square feet, or 35% total coverage on lots over 40,000 square feet. So basically what it would do is on a...
It's based on lot size.
It's based on lot size.
Okay, and that's all for the new proposed codes of
Right.
R1, R2, R3?
Just for the residential
Just
codes.
for the for all the Rs?
For all the Rs, yes.
Okay. So then it's proposed in here that we're going to get away from like the commercial, industrial, and a single residential, and break this up into the industrial into L1 or G1, correct?
There'd be light industrial, and then there'd be general industrial.
Right, so right now I'm a property owner.
Am I correct, Liz?
Yeah, but there's no such thing as commercial industrial.
Okay, so that's just...
General.
Just industrial.
Right now it's just industrial, okay. So my thing is my property up on Voorhees Road right now is zoned industrial. And when we go, the way that the paper's written in here now, whether it gets changed to, because it has to get changed, right, to either L1 or G1, right? The property, correct, Liz?
Well, G1 is basically industrial, like it is now, for the most part. And then
Right, and
light
that's
industrial
how-
is new.
Technically, that's how mine's listed right now, is just industrial.
Right, which is, the equivalent is GI, the general industry.
Got it, okay. So, but there's also the L1, which is a light industrial. So, by those clarifications, I mean, I went and printed off, some of these code amendments of what you can and can't do in the specific areas, what's allowed, the usage allowance. And I just don't know if we need to have this discussion now or later after we decide whether, is Warriors Road going to stay G1 or L1. Because if it gets kicked down to L1, then I lose what I can do with my property. And right now, because like it says, I can't have a sawmill. It's not allowed in L1, but it is in G1. So that means I can't take my sawmill up to my property and cut a board for, say, John here, and sell it to him, because it's not listed, but right now I can. So I'm not sure if this is something that needs to be addressed in these, or is this going to be a talk to have later down the road and just hope for the best?
The talk about what your property is going to be is a talk for later down the road. This is just creating the categories of what the different properties, what you can do on the different properties.
Right, so I would say, I would like to see, like a caretaker dwelling be allowed in L1 then. Because if I want to put up a warehouse with an apartment in it, if my zoning gets changed down the road to L1, I can't do that, but right now I can.
Liz?
Residential uses are allowed in L1.
Well, and here it says dwelling for caretaker or
If you
watchman.
don't need a caretaker dwelling, you can just have a house
You can just have a house in light industry.
in light industrial.
In light industry.
Yeah.
So it is permitted,
It is
but just in the chart here it says it's not.
Well, because caretaker
Yeah.
dwelling is something that you would have in an industrial property, but since you already can have all of the regular residential uses, like a single-family house, you can build whatever size house you want. You don't need to be restricted to the caretaker dwelling size.
Yeah, but I'm talking about on my industrial lot.
Did you just not say in
Yeah.
light industrial?
No, I said in the light industrial it's not permitted, but right now my property is listed as G1. But like he says, after all this wording passes, correct? Then we get into the argument about, okay, now what are we going to rezone my property to? And everybody agrees that they're going to make it L1, then I can't do it according to the wording that's in here right now.
I think we went in a big circle, but let me ask you this. Are you saying that if your property were to stay GI, like it is now, you want to be able to put a caretaker dwelling on there?
I think in here it said that you could on GI, but you couldn't on L.
Right, so LI, you don't need a caretaker dwelling because you can just build a regular house.
Okay. So, but then if make it on, I'm on page 215 of this here. It says wood products manufacturers such as sawmills. If it gets going down to LI, then I have to apply for a conditional use permit to be able to use my property to cut lumber on my property. As where right now I don't have to because it's GI.
Correct. If you were zoned into light industrial and you wanted to use a sawmill, that would be a conditional use. Correct.
Right, so I guess I'm just kind of wondering if we couldn't make that permitted in the wording now. So if I lose the battle down the road, I still want to be able to saw my thing on there without having to come back up here to come get a conditional use permit.
Yeah, I mean,
Just so I can put my sawmill on my property and cut boards in my house. Legally.
do you guys want me to add that to the list as something to talk about? Or you can address it as you wish.
That sounds like an amendment.
That's what it sounds like to me.
So my question is, Liz, maybe you could answer this. We don't have to go through there. I mean, okay, in L1, my understanding, reason we're not actually going in with this proposal and going to rezone existing property. I mean, that's basically what this is doing is for the future, right? In other words, you know, if the city
Right, but
continues to
that's coming
grow.
after this.
Right, right. So what's happened right now is, and what we're trying to address is a lot of the areas where we came up with L1 were the areas where there's mixed uses right now, where you have people that have built houses next to people that have commercial or industrial activities. And that was the vision that area would be L1. And then what we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate the conflicts between people that have a house and then their neighbor decides to put in a wrecking yard next door or a large-scale sawmill. I don't, because we've had to deal with several sawmill-type issues already. I think, that's the intent of this, is to, and then say, okay, this is an industrial area, you can do industrial activities in here, but we don't want you to build a house here because maybe not now, but 20 years from now, we'll have issues. The people that are living in the house say, I don't like that guy's auto wrecking yard next door because he's up at 2:30 in the morning breaking cars apart.
I know it just needs to
Yeah.
get cleaned up so we don't
Right.
have more places like what's already, people living on the water across from the vets in that area over there in town already.
Right,
You
that's,
know, that got grandfathered in by calling it a caretaker's apartment
correct,
when it's a residential house,
right, yeah, that's,
because they already own the barn on the property.
right, that's the intent of what we're trying to do here, is to make it easier going forward in the future versus specifically taking and looking at individual pieces of property, oh, that's going to be L1 or that's going to be industrial. You know, because we have 3 classifications of industrial: waterfront.
Okay, well,
You know, so,
I understand that. I'm just
Yeah.
bringing up some points that I see. And
no,
I
they're valid
didn't have
points.
enough- I apologize for not
Oh,
really
no,
diving
we're
deeper into
learning.
this.
Yeah, we're learning too. I mean, this is a lot of stuff to digest.
Right, so I just don't want
Yeah.
to throw myself in the next phase when it should have been addressed here. In
Right.
the wording phase before it even becomes code.
Can I ask Liz a question?
Yes.
Okay, now my understanding is like somebody having a small sawmill, not like an industrial type operation, like that would be, that's approved right now in L1?
No, it would be a conditional use,
It'd be a conditional use permit. So in other words, you'd have to come and get a permit, right?
the way it's written out right now, unless it's an existing, you know, unless they're already got it operating on that property, then they're grandfathered in. But
Right.
if they don't, and they want to start up a sawmill on light industrial, it would be a conditional use.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I
Thank you.
have for right now.
Any additional testimony? Yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Miggers. And do I understand it correctly, this is sort of a work session now for addressing the new proposed?
We're going to be voting on amendments and then voting on a recommendation of the Borough Assembly today.
Okay. That's the new 200-page.
You're optimistic about the page count.
That I don't have, I got a copy machine, one at a time. So I know the number of pages. Yeah, so that's my big complaint. What, we should have made it 50 pages instead of 200 plus. I tried working with it as best I could on the internet, and it was just too hard for me to do it that way, and so I bit the bullet and just printed this out. And I've been working with this for many, many hours, and I'm maybe 1/4 of the way through it. Now, is this the last meeting where we, the public, can participate?
This is the last meeting at the Planning Commission level. We are going to make recommendation to the Borough Assembly, and then there's 3 meetings at the Borough Assembly, one of which is a public hearing.
Okay. And then, of course, the Assembly's meetings are so formal, it's kind of hard to participate in those. I like to come here because I'm a lot more comfortable. I made a comment the last time I was here that I think you're moving too fast on this. And I have some bad memories of the borough formation where I just assumed, okay, we're going to go so far with the preliminary meetings that we had, and that there would be opportunities to make make more changes, participate more, but then all of a sudden it's being voted on, and then if I had some complaints about that process, I said, well, you passed up your chance to participate, and so I'm a little bit concerned that this is the last meeting to do this, because I haven't had the brain power to go through all 200 plus pages to really feel comfortable participating. I made some recommendations on the internet, and I assume other people have as well. Those how are those being presented for everybody to look at and make comments? And then who will be making the changes, or when will those changes be made by you folks before it goes to the assembly? Will that be done at future meetings that you will,
No,
future P&Z meetings?
we're voting on the amendments today and then voting on the final recommendation to the Borough Assembly today.
Okay. Well,
I see your name.
I'm nervous
a number
about
of
that.
times.
John, this is the fourth public meeting we've had since January 6th.
Yes, I've been to all 4 of them.
Yeah, I know. So, I mean, I understand, it's just, I agree with you, this is a lot of information to assimilate, but, and then we've been working on this planning and zoning for over a year now, and
Yeah.
at every meeting.
You have.
Right. And all those meetings have been open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And all duly noted. So, I mean, at some point we have to, we have to do our job.
Correct. What I'm concerned about is that all 4 of these meetings that I've attended, there's only been 1, 2, 3 people here, so I'm concerned that the general public isn't really aware of the huge changes that are taking place in the proposed new planning code. I know this isn't possible, but I wish you could do it like an individual is buying a new car. And you want to take it for a test ride and learn a little bit about it. I wish there was some way that could be done. Take this new code a little bit more for a test ride and let people learn more about it to contribute better, to try to anticipate challenges ahead of time. That's about all I have really here. I did have a question. I read references in here of zoning changes would be a type 4 review. What is that?
That means Borough
A
Assembly.
type 4 review.
That means Borough Assembly would be the final approval.
Sorry.
That means the Borough Assembly would be the final approver. It would still come before Planning and Zoning, but and we would make just a recommendation, and then the Borough Assembly would, just like it is today.
But, let's say on the industrial where you have the changes, the proposed changes going from general industrial to light industrial, what's the process for everybody to determine where the boundaries are going to be and whether the changes would take place?
Liz?
All right, so when we actually get to doing the map, we'll send out, when we actually get to the point of doing the map, we'll actually send out public notice letters to anyone who's affected, their property's affected, and then people 600 feet around the affected property. I don't think that light industrial is going to be widespread, so I think it'll be pretty small areas, and then, so those folks and then the surrounding property owners will be notified, as well as our usual public notice on the radio and in the newspaper will go out.
Is that different from the present process?
No, it's not.
Okay, so it's the same.
It's the same process.
Okay, I think that's all I got. Let me take a quick look at some of my sticky notes here. Well, I've already made, probably a dozen or so recommendations.
Did you see the ones that, I mean, we have them listed here. And that's what we're going to be taking up one by one today and voting on.
Okay.
I see your name associated with
So then the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see this.
Okay.
Thank you. I thought, I don't want to take up any more of your time. You got a lot of stuff to talk about. I thought there would be a motion to adjourn here or something. Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome, God.
Thanks, Marge.
we have any additional public testimony?
Hi, this is David Griffin from Trust Land Office. I was just curious, do you guys read the write-in letters or write-in comments as part of the record, or how does that work?
Dave?
We received the letters. I mean, we can read them in if you want us to, but I don't know whether that's necessary. I mean, there will be...
Yeah, that's my question. I didn't know.
They are part of the record.
Okay.
I mean, if you want, we can read them.
Okay.
You volunteering?
Or I mean, I could sum it up. I just didn't know if you guys were going to discuss my request.
Yes. I don't know. Did you get a chance to get the page that says Development Code Amendments?
On the website?
No, I don't see your name associated with this, so, with any of these.
You don't either.
Yes, Liz?
Just so you know that, so that came in after I'd already, after this.
Oh, after we done.
After we already done that, okay.
Those amendments or any recommendations he makes are not included in this.
Okay. So we'll address that after we've gone through all the other, unless you guys want to do it first.
The comments from Rockin' Road.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that now, so you could,
Okay.
okay. You want me to read them?
Sure.
Okay, we have two letters. One's from Aaron Quinn.
O'Quinn.
O'Quinn, yeah.
O'Quinn. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the Petersburg Borough's proposed development code revision. As you, the borough staff, elected officials, are no doubt aware, the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority, through the Trust Land Office, is in the process of exchanging 18,000 acres of current trust land for 20,500 acres of U.S. Forest Service lands. Specifically in Petersburg, the trust will be transferring nearly 4,000 acres of land to U.S. Forest Service ownership. And so see the attached map. The acreage is predominantly adjacent to private landowners in the right-of-way of the Mikoff Highway. We believe this exchange is an opportunity to preserve the viewshed and recreational amenities that these lands currently provide the residents of Petersburg, while allowing the trust to develop timber resources elsewhere in southeast Alaska, providing jobs and other economic development opportunities. The land exchange legislation requires our Petersburg acreage to be conveyed by May 5th, 2019. To do so, the TLO is in the process of preparing preliminary plats that will create the tracts required by the federal legislation. The boundary line adjustments will require new subdivision plats, which is currently the purview of the state of Alaska. To ensure that this platting process is successfully completed in time for the May 5th, 2019 legislative deadline, the TLO respectfully requests that any plat submitted to the state of Alaska for these lands be exempt from any new platting, development, or subdivision laws or regulations that are adopted by the Petersburg Borough. This might be accomplished by specifically exempting subdivisions related to the land exchange project by delaying the implementation of the platting and zoning requirements for an appropriate amount of time, or exempting projects which are already before the state of Alaska for platting review. This comment is limited only to the review of the proposed platting and zoning regulations as they apply to the land exchange project. The TLO is currently reviewing the regulations in more detail, and additional comments on the regulations and their effects on the TLO retained Petersburg area lands will be impacted by the regulations may be forthcoming. Okay, so I guess this is the next letter. And David, this one's from you. Do you want to explain this? Or I can read it.
Yeah, basically, I mean, you don't have to go through the whole thing, but basically what I'm requesting is, as the Trust Land Office is a office within the Department of Natural Resources, and currently we can work state to state on projects such as subdivision, surveys, and plating, and currently outside Service Area 1, as you guys are all aware, which is where my concerns are at present, the state DNR has plating authority. And so once this revised code gets adopted and the Petersburg Borough takes over plating authority, then they will take over plating in this area that I've got some potential projects going. And so what I'm requesting of the Petersburg Borough is to, for the trust lands that are south of Papkeys, between Papkeys and Blind Slough, we've got a really large tract in there. What I'm requesting is that the borough hold off on taking over plating authority on those properties until January 1st, 2020. That would allow the Trust Land Office to move forward on a couple of projects where for the next year and a half, where we would be working with the Department of Natural Resources Survey and Plating Unit. And so that's really the gist of our request, is that that the planning commissioners consider this request, and I think it would be beneficial for my office. It would streamline the process of completing the work in a timely fashion and at a lower cost. And then ultimately, it would be good for the borough, because we would take, large land that's currently unsubdivided, and then we would create large lots that I think the Petersburg real estate market could bear, 5, 10, and 20-acre lots, and which would ultimately help you guys in terms of your tax base, etc., and creating some new opportunities, because as I'm aware, there's not very many 5, 10, or 20-acre lots available in the Petersburg borough on the road system. And so that's what I'm requesting. My fear is that if the Petersburg borough goes ahead and takes over plating this area, we may not move forward with our subdivision projects, and may end up just working in some other areas. So that's really the gist of the letter and our request. So thank you for the consideration.
Thank you.
Chris?
Yes.
Liz, could you, I mean, personally, I don't have any problem with the first part. I understand the timeline. But I mean, our whole purpose in becoming a borough was so that we could have a little bit of control over the property outside of Service Area 1. So my question is, what is the disadvantage of waiting until 2020 as he's requested?
Well, I think from the borough's perspective, DNR has very few standards when they approve a plat. They don't require any minimum lot sizes. They also don't require extension of utilities or any type of road building. And what we've seen in the past is land subdivided, but like power not extended, or roads not built, or clear access not provided. And I think in the long run, the property is less valuable, which means it's less valuable to the borough when we add it to the tax roll. And in some cases, the property ends up being really not developable. Obvious example would be the subdivision at Frederick Point North, kind of that uphill side where there's lots of individual property owners, but it would be really cost prohibitive for anyone to develop a lot up there, the way it got laid out without any kind of utilities or anything else. So the idea would be to actually have some say in making sure that the lots that get created are lots that are large enough to have an on-site sewer system. They actually have clear access. If they're close to the road system, there's a road connecting so that we can run power, and they're complying with our utility extension ordinances. And they're actually lots that people are going to want to buy and can be developed in a way that is positive for everyone in town and also adds to the local tax base.
And what are the minimum requirements for road and power, say, in the rural parts of the borough?
Excuse me, folks, is Liz on a microphone? Because I'm not able to hear any of her answers to your questions.
I'm talking right. No? Can you hear me now? No? I don't.
It's really quiet.
That might make.
Do you want me to go? Oh, here. Will that work?
The technical expert left the room for a minute.
He has to hear you on one of these.
Right.
Better? Is that better? Yeah? Okay. Where was I?
What are the minimum requirements
Thank you.
for the rural subdivisions?
So it is, if you're a remote subdivision, which means you're not on Mickoff Island and you're more than half mile from a publicly maintained road, then it's just legal and practical access is what you're showing. So every lot has that. If you're on Mickoff Island within half a mile of a publicly maintained road, you are being asked to build a privately maintained road. So you can build a road. It doesn't have to be to borough standards. It also has to be a subdivision that has more than 4 lots on it, so a major subdivision.
So minor subdivisions are exempt?
Minor subdivisions would be exempt from that requirement, yeah. And then another part of the code not included in this drives extension of electric. So in order to get that electric brought to a subdivision, you have to put in the road and you have to run the power to the edge of each lot. And that's a different provision in our borough code. So that's basically it.
Anybody else have questions? Do you have any additional testimony from the public? Shall we start the process of going through the amendments?
I make a motion that unless a member specifically wants to pull one of these out, that all that are approved by staff recommendation, and what I'm referring to now, I guess, is this page here where it says Development Code Amendments, the summary. All the ones that have approved staff recommendations, that we just do one motion for all of those, unless there's any specific ones that any members want to pull out.
I disagree.
Okay. You want to go one by one?
Well, because I've got an issue with number 10, and it says approve.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, 10 is one I said because we got a 10 and a 10A now. I don't know if you looked at the newest one, there's a 10A in there. And they're different language of the same thing. So, But it's a different approach of how to handle it. So
based on that,
So I think we should address 10 and 10A together as a, look at those together and decide which way we want to go.
the
on
ones
those.
it says here that it says approve, I don't see those taking very long to
Okay.
just
Okay, we can just go through one by one. I haven't got a problem with that either. So let's start with AA then.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I missed it. Did you guys make a motion to recommend?
No, we have not.
Okay,
tonight. Sorry.
Okay.
And it was never seconded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
So we had a motion? Okay. Do you have a motion?
For AA, I make a motion.
Do we have a motion to recommend to the Borough Assembly adoption of the proposed code?
So moved.
I second.
Okay. Now, we have discussion. And,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think that we should deal with the motions that have been, or the amendments that have been made here in this meeting first before we go through these written ones.
Okay.
To relieve the folks.
Okay, let me get back to my notes here.
Mr. Bird's amendment for sawmill and light industrial.
Okay, well, we address that one first. We have an amendment for wood products production in light industrial to be a permitted use instead of a conditional use permit. Discussion.
Where are we here?
This is an amendment that's been added just at the beginning part of this meeting, so. It would be an amendment to, in the light industrial, right now, as the code is written, it would be a conditional use permit to do wood products manufacture such as sawmills, paper, and allied products, and secondary wood products, except artisanal and light manufacturer uses. So, right now we have that as a conditional use permit in the light industry. The amendment that was suggested was to make that a permitted use.
Okay, but now in his case, he's in the industrial now.
He's in industrial now.
So he doesn't need to worry about it.
He doesn't need to worry about it, but he was saying if his property was zoned light industry, that's
Yeah,
why.
but it's not, if it's zoned what it is now, it's going to stay, isn't it?
Right.
At least unless some procedure goes through.
Until we redraw the zoning map. And he's concerned that if we redraw the zoning map and then we place light industrial zoning on his property, then he wouldn't be allowed to do that use.
But that isn't the intent here, is it, to change people's
No, the intent
zoning?
isn't to change people's zoning at this time. It's to set up the zoning categories. And
there may be some rezoning later on.
Could be, yeah. I mean, that happens every now and then, has been in the past.
so his interest is to ensure that any potential future zoning covers his need.
Okay.
Could I make a suggestion that, I mean, this type of use, I think, would be artisanal because it's not like you're, no?
Well, I would just say that you shouldn't have one piece of property drive
Right.
the code.
I understand.
You know, if it's not appropriate for his property and probably surrounding properties to be light industrial, then they shouldn't be light industrial.
Yeah.
You know?
That's kind of how I think things will fall out.
I mean, I understand the concern that he's expressing, and I think it's smart that he's bringing it up now.
Right.
But I would be very surprised to see this body or the assembly move that type of property into light industrial. It does not seem appropriate. It's not consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's not consistent with the use how it's being used now and expected to be used in the future. So
You were talking in the in the potential areas where this light industrial would go would be likely on Scow Bay Loop, on the water side, and on the upper part of Cornelius.
Correct.
So those are the two areas that have really only been discussed as potential. So it's more likely that the property would be remaining in general industry. So it shouldn't be an issue. Unless we have further discussion on that one, I don't even think we need to, or do we want to do what is a suggested amendment? I'd need to have somebody make a motion. So,
I think that kind of defeats the purpose of having L1 altogether, you know, I mean, which is to say, if somebody is in the future in L1 and they do want to do a sawmill, then yeah, they can come and apply for a conditional use permit.
So,
And I would add too that with the conditional use permit, you know, basically what that says is this is probably an okay use, but there might be some impact and we should try and figure out how to mitigate those impacts. Conditional use doesn't mean unlikely, you know. It really should lend itself to being allowed when the commission approaches it. So,
yeah, that makes sense because otherwise it would just be a prohibited use.
It would just be a no, yeah.
As I've read it, the use is allowed with conditions.
Generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah. So. Okay.
Based on that, I don't see the point to even making an amendment there.
Okay, do we have any motion concerning the trust land office's requests for amendments?
Do we know what their bare minimums are for their subdivisions? Are they going to put in a Pioneer Road or anything?
Well, survey one in, I think, but not,
But not build it?
that's my understanding.
Well, the way I see it, we have two separate requests here. One is the first letter, which is
May 5th?
which is for the surveying of property that's going to go into the exchange from Aaron O'Quinn. So I make a motion. Before I do that, I need to ask Liz a question. Why do we even need to address this? It seems like it's already going to, do we need to put this in this document at all?
I think we can and we should do something to acknowledge that we want to make sure that those land trust surveys, if they start with DNR, they can finish with DNR because they are under a tight deadline. I would have put something in. I just had a conversation with DNR, and they wanted to check and see what their status was on what they have in process before giving a definitive yes. But what we're working under right now is anything that starts with DNR stays with DNR after up until July 1st. On July 1st, applications start coming to the borough. But if you started with DNR, we're going to accept DNR plats all the way through July 1st, 2019. So there'll still be legal plat within the borough. And that would cover these land transfers. They could stay with their process, but we're going to recognize those as legal lots when they're signed through DNR. So that's kind of the process, but we need to work out all the in writing and dot the i's and cross the t's. But they're in agreement, and they think that's a reasonable timeline. I think that makes sense. I want to double check and make sure that we're not doing anything crosswise in the code with that. the way it's set right now is July 1st is the effective date, but I think I do need to go back and make sure that we're going to accept DNR approved plats through July 1st, 2019. So if you want to adopt something with that intent, I can work with the borough attorney and the DNR and make sure that we get that in there as intended.
Okay, with that clarification, I make a motion that we approve all land exchange subdivisions that have started with DNR until July 1st, 2019.
I would just leave it at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second.
Okay, we have any further discussion on that? What? Sally, second.
Does that meet Mr., the other guy, Mr. Griffin's timeline? It's short by about 5 months, 6 months.
Dave, did you hear that?
I did not. I heard the question that was asked just now, but I can't hear anyone that's not on a microphone.
We're all on mics.
It's these microphone that he's hearing.
Oh. The one right in front of me?
Yeah.
I didn't hear. Can you repeat your question, please?
So, anyway, did you hear my motion?
I did not.
Okay, I'll repeat the motion. The motion is that all lands, or why don't you just read what you think I said? No? Okay. Shucks. Okay. Okay. All lands that have been submitted to DNR for subdivision plating that started the process be accepted by the borough until July 1st, 2019.
And they have to start prior to July 1st, 2018.
Yes, and they have to start prior, right,
To July 1st, 2018.
yes.
And I had seconded that, Mr. Griffin, and asked if this met your timeline, even though it was about 5 months short.
The July 1st, 2019 could likely work, but to get started by July 1st, 2018 would not work.
I think it was paperwork by July 1, 18.
Can we specifically exclude the mental health lands until January 1st, 2020, as he's requesting?
That would be ideal for us, and that would solve all the issues. I mean, the way the legislation is written for the land exchange is that everything has to be completed by May 5th, 2019, like the conveyance documents and all that, those sorts of things. May, June, July. But as I think you guys probably realize, in the real world, sometimes things take longer. And so one of the reasons that I had proposed, January 1st, 2020 is because I felt like that built in enough time to handle any sort of, surprises, I guess.
I guess maybe I should clarify, Liz. I guess what I was trying to address with my motion was specifically the land exchange legislation.
Okay, sorry, I confused that.
With
the
Mr.
two.
O'Quinn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to specify mental health trust land exchange subdivisions, okay?
Yes. Yeah, so what I'm doing is addressing the first letter, not the second one. So,
Okay, yeah. And that makes
the first letter, the motion specifically addresses land exchange legislation. Anything that started with the process with DNR, July 1st, 2019.
Yes.
Which, according to your letter here, you have to be done by May 5th, 2019, so that should give you plenty of time.
Absolutely, for the land exchange, absolutely.
Okay, do we have any further discussion on this? Karen, you want to do a roll call?
Yes.
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Dave, Richard,
Yes.
and Chris.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, then I'll make a motion on the second letter, and I'll make the motion, but I will say I don't support it, so maybe I shouldn't even make the motion. Somebody else want to make a motion?
Do we have a motion?
So does everybody understand what we did was we addressed the first letter as concerned, but the second letter we're not. Unless somebody wants to make the motion.
I'll make the motion and just so we can discuss it and then
I don't care if
vote
you
however
don't
we
believe
want
it.
to vote.
Yeah, okay.
But, I move to delay taking over the plating authority on TLO specific lands until January 1st, 2020, as specified in the letter.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
I think it's a bad idea because I've seen some of the subdivisions that have recently been done by mental health, and I think we'd be doing them a favor by at least taking a look at some of them and pointing out to them that they're not going to work, and the value of the property is going to be very limited. If you can't access a piece of property, if it's not big enough to have a waste disposal on it, if you can't get electricity to it, if you can't build a road to it, it's not going to have a whole lot of value. And I don't think what we're doing is prohibiting the development of property. I think what we're doing is trying to, I hate to say it, but save them from themselves in some of these layouts that they've done in the past. And I think in the long run, property will have more value to the borough. And in the long run, I think mental health will be able to get more money out of the property. Specifically, there's not a lot of land available in Southeast Alaska. It's very limited. There's very little private land in Southeast Alaska. Some of these are great parcels if they are done properly. And I think the long-term interests of the borough require that the lots meet some of the very minimum standards that we've talked about. And that's why I think it's a good idea for the borough to take a look at this, because we actually live here, we're on the ground here, we know what you need to do, and it's not precluding the development, it's just making it better.
In discussions I've had with people in the borough, there is demand for larger lots within the borough, but they've got to be larger lots with access. And I can't support doing this and saying that we're not going to require access and improvements. I don't think it's in the best interest of the borough, and I don't think the lots will sell very well. Any further discussion? Karen?
No.
Dave,
No.
Sally,
No.
Chris,
No.
Richard,
No.
Otis.
No. Okay. Do we have any other amendments that are not listed as part of our packet? Let me get back back here to the beginning of this thing, wherever it is. Here we go.
Mr. Chairman, there is one that addresses, kind of amends number 8. I don't know if you just want to address it at that time. It's to increase the caretaker dwelling to 1,200 square feet. That, we received a letter on that on Friday.
Why don't we address that with 8?
With 8, okay.
Okay.
So I made a note here so we can remember as well.
I'll put it on my little table here, too.
Okay.
Okay. First one, we'll start with AA is an amendment. Adds language to explain the organization of code, specifying what portions of the code are applied in different areas of the borough. Do we have a motion?
I move to accept this amendment.
I second.
Discussion?
I would like a spell check on this first. It says
Portions, not potions, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Sally.
You're welcome, sorry.
That's okay.
Richard, and the second was
Dave.
Dave.
I call for the question.
Karen?
Otis.
I haven't made up my mind yet here.
I like it.
I'm not sure what we're doing here.
It's just adding some clarification to the language in Article 1 to specify where the code is being applied. So if you turn back in your packet from where it says Amendment AA, the next couple of pages, the parts in red are the addition.
Turn back to where?
Toward the back of the packet.
Next page.
There you go.
I'm glad Karen called on Otis first. Sorry.
Keep us all chance to read.
Put him on the spot.
Can you tell me in simple language exactly what this says? Without me reading it over about 3 times to decide?
Sure. Basically, what it says is that the plating authority, which is the subdivision, that applies throughout the entire borough. The zoning parts, only in Service Area 1. Building permits, only in Service Area 1. So it just adds intent language, so in case there's any confusion as you read the code, it's pretty clear in this part what applies where. You know, this applies to everybody, the plating authority, the zoning part of it, the building permits, only Service Area 1.
Okay, I agree with that. I guess that's a yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and Nancy.
Yes.
Okay, move on to AB, which is just some clarification language in the hotels, motels, and similar uses category. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Basically, it's just adding the word lodges to that line to clarify, including everything, just so that it's clear.
We have a definition for a lodge?
No.
So, no.
It's semantical. Just what they
Yeah.
call themselves.
So,
There's definition in chapter 5,
Will we?
but there is no definition of a lodge in chapter 5.
So we would probably use the same definition as we use for hotel motel, you know? It just adds another example of, just because you call yourself a lodge doesn't mean you're outside of that hotel motel definition, you're inside that definition.
Right, but will there be some confusion for things that are allowed that may call themselves a lodge?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe a bed and breakfast or something
Yeah.
that's smaller than, or Airbnb may call themselves a lodge or something, but,
Well, we have a definition of a B&B.
okay.
So if it exceeds that, then you're into that hotel, motel, lodge category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just trying to be clear for future is the whole idea on that one. So, if there's no further discussion, Karen?
Nancy,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
Okay, we have amendment number 1, which is an amendment to reduce the minimum lot size for single-family residential and rural residential 2.5 acres. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
I know we've had problems with this in the past.
I think the concern is if we get lot sizes that small outside of the areas that have services, that we don't have a large enough lot to provide for septic.
With a half acre.
Yeah.
With a half acre. So that's the reason to have our zoning being at 1 acre is what we're calling for in the rural areas. Yes.
Is this applying just to subdividing or actual building a home?
This is applying to subdividing,
Only subdividing?
only subdividing.
So does this
So
apply to
it's-
existing lots?
No.
I would not.
So
No.
if you own a 100 by 100 lot outside of service area 1, you'll still be able to build a house.
Right.
If the way that's worded, you wouldn't be able to because you're under your lot size.
Well, what this is for is if somebody owns a large piece of land outside of service area 1, they could only subdivide down to 1 acre parcels.
So that only pertains to when they re-subdivide, it has to go down.
Right.
In the future.
And as the author of this, I didn't know if it was pre-existing lots would still be allowed.
Lots that are already zoned smaller than 1 acre can still exist and still be utilized.
I can go with that.
Yeah. Any further discussion?
This, to me, is saying that you can reduce your lot size.
That's what the amendment is, to reduce it.
Yes.
To make it a half acre.
Yeah, and so
I thought we just said that,
the way the code currently reads, it's a 1 acre minimum. This amendment would reduce that minimum to a half acre.
okay, if I feel that 1 acre is the smallest size that ought to be out there in rural residential, I will not, yeah, okay.
Okay. Yes.
Sally,
No.
Nancy,
No.
Otis,
No.
Dave,
No.
Chris,
No.
Richard.
No.
Okay, Amendment 2 is to maintain the 10-foot side yard setback in medium-density residential.
I make a motion that we approve this.
I second.
Discussion?
I think it's reasonable, particularly coming from Mr. Bungie. He made a pretty compelling argument that you need to have that to effectively fight fires and to prevent the spread of fires in residential areas.
I think fire code kicks in when you go within that 10-foot setback, and you have to start adding exterior sheetrock and stuff that helps mitigate that. And for that, I don't.
So can you clarify on that? I think it's 10 feet of separation
Right,
So
from the
it's
property line.
5 feet of setback for each
Right.
lot.
So once you start getting closer than the 10-foot, you start implementing fire code at 5 feet. You can't have any openings that are not fire rated, so you wouldn't be able to have any windows. I think when we talked about it, I think someone would be hard pressed to build a dwelling, that close just because of the fire code requirements, but we could see someone going closer with an accessory structure. That would make more sense, but certainly if someone, it's all a matter of money. If you wanted to spend that much money to build your house at the 5-foot line and comply with all the necessary fire codes, without this amendment, someone would be able to do that.
Minimum density, what does that mean?
Medium density, that is going to be, it's a new district that's being created with the 5,000 square foot lot size. I think the one implication from this, and I noted that, is if we keep that 5,000 square foot standard and you have the 10-foot setback, most folks are not going to qualify for the variance because they no longer have a substandard lot, right? And that's how we're granting most of the variances kind of in this downtown area where you have a lot of those 5,000 square foot lots. They don't meet the minimum lot standard currently. They're substandard lots. They're asking for a variance. They meet the criteria almost automatically because the lots are smaller than standard. So if you keep those 10-foot setbacks in place and we have that 5,000 square foot size, that's the standard size, it's going to be very difficult. They're going to have like a ditch or a stream or something really going through their property to actually qualify for those variances. So just so you understand how it kind of comes out on the other end too.
You're saying if we don't maintain the 10-foot, then they'll have a harder time qualifying.
Now, I'm saying if you maintain the 10-foot, a lot of people request the variance because those lots are pretty small.
Right.
If we make the 5,000 square foot the minimum, the standard, then they no longer have a substandard lot.
Okay.
And so it will be harder for anyone to qualify for a variance.
Okay.
Because they're no longer coming in with a substandard lot and have some kind of hardship. Oh, my lot's smaller than standard, so therefore I need the variance. They can't make that case.
Yeah.
So to meet this suggested here, you'd have 20 foot between buildings, 10 feet on each side of the lot line.
Right. As if you were supporting the amendment, it would be 20 feet between buildings. Yeah.
I really don't want to lock all these people with small lot sizes out from being able to get variances. So I'm not going to support this. I think fire code is going to take over, and I think Joe will be pretty effective in enforcing that.
I like it. I'm going to vote for it.
Well,
Richard?
No.
Chris?
No.
Otis?
Yes.
Sally?
Yes.
Yancy?
No.
Dave?
Yes.
Okay.
What was the end on that?
Fails.
Fails, okay. Thank you.
Um,
But there's 7.
We got to do that over?
So 3 and 3.
3 and 3.
Tori's not here.
Okay.
So
Phew. Okay.
so that means it doesn't pass.
It doesn't pass.
Moving on to number 3, expand the definition of artisanal use to include woodworking and welding. The use would still be limited to use that is blended with retail use. In other words, the manufacturer of products are designed for on-site retail sale. Do we have a motion?
I so move.
A second.
Discussion. I think it's good. Karen?
Ready? Dave,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Otis,
Can I think about it a little longer? I've seen where we had some good people leave town because they couldn't do welding in a pretty wide open area. We lost a really good shop teacher at the school because of that, I thought. Is welding something that could be like at least one sawmill in town that's only done during certain hours of the day or something, instead of just plain excluding it?
This amendment would allow it.
This includes,
This allows it in the commercial districts.
Okay. Yes.
Chris,
Yes. Number 4, standards for residential dwellings on Main Street District. We have a motion.
I so moved.
I second.
Discussion.
So all it does is eliminate the naming of the streets, and then you just point to the map instead, so that,
Okay.
yeah. So then it would just, we don't have to keep changing things in all these different places. We can just be like, okay.
You just say it's
It's in the map, yeah.
yep.
Okay. Karen?
Chris,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Okay, moving on to number 5. Limit home occupation to 400 square feet, variance required to exceed.
I so move.
Do you have a second?
Second?
Discussion.
I would rather see this scale with lot size. As lot size increases, I think the impact on your neighbors decreases.
I think also the issue I have with 400 square feet is that that is smaller than the average two-car garage. And, the average two-car garage is more in the 500 square foot range. So that would be my concern with it.
Well, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but the way the new code is set up, you don't even have to come to planning and zoning to start a home occupation business. And all this does is say that if you want to start a home occupation business, that's going to be more than 400 square feet, then you have to apply for a permit. That's my understanding.
It would apply for a variance.
A variance, right?
Yeah.
What is that, 20 by 20?
Right.
20 by 20.
So it's not specifically, if somebody's got a two-car garage, it's not saying you can't use your two-car garage, but if you want to use your two-car garage and you're going to use all of it, then yeah, you need to get a variance.
Yeah.
And just, of course, we would be applying the variance criteria. So
Right.
they'd have to demonstrate that there's something about their lot that it's not really a great fit for home occupation, but
And this is single-family residential, I suppose.
This is any of the residential
residential.
zones.
Yeah, with the new code, there is no more single-family residential.
Okay.
And the way this is enforced, I was trying to read it here, I couldn't get it out of here. If you had a two-car garage, basically the way it says is it's the floor area, so you can say you're just using this half of the two-car garage. There doesn't have to be a wall separating it even.
I don't know.
I mean, is what.
Yeah,
right
but it's-
here.
Yeah.
If you want to do more than 400 square feet, then you have to apply for a variance.
Right.
Yeah, but again, remember, with a variance, there has to be a reason. We have to do the three findings of fact.
Right. And
So
it restricts things.
It restricts things. We've done 525 for years.
Right, because with the 525, they just needed a conditional use permit.
But we've done everything under conditional use permit before. Now, under this new standard, we don't do home occupations under a conditional use permit. So,
Some home occupations are pretty quiet.
and there can be quite a few, and some of them can take quite a bit of
Yeah.
space, but not make any noise at all. So, I think we kind of are limiting ourselves as far as different things that people could be doing. And in a small community like ours, it is the threshold for starting business is rather high, and costs are high, and the fact with a limited population, the amount of customers you have is low. So your when you start up, you're not going to generate a lot of revenue quickly. So going out and having to lease property or purchase property of a commercial nature is going to be difficult. So you're going to see a lot of people wanting to do home-based occupation.
Again, I'd rather see the scale with lot size.
So I think 5 has there's 2 different proposals there. So if we look at that one,
5 and then 5A.
5 and 5A. And I'm trying to remember where that one is exactly. There's 5.
It says increases maximum lot size based on lot size.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's a different, there was a different one, there was another thing on lot size. Where is it?
It's in 5A,
It's in-
XXI on page
XXI.
35.
So,
Well, once again, my main reason is, as you guys know, I haven't ever been very enamored with the home occupation anyway. And although I'm not trying to restrict home occupation uses, I just want to, if we're going to allow home occupations and not have them even go through a permitting process like we have in the past, then I'm just afraid we're opening the Pandora's box to turning our residential property into quasi-commercial property. So my understanding of this is that, although it's pretty clear here and that this is good, I'm just afraid, you're going to get dentist offices, doctor's offices, psychiatrist's offices.
but with the limited number of people that can visit, you've got limits on number of visits per day. There's a tremendous number of limitations in this home occupation already.
Right.
So I don't see that, people are not going to run a business in home occupation, are not going to be able to run one where they have a lot of customers or where they have a lot of deliveries or anything that makes a lot of noise, or they're running big machinery.
No, I understand. It's just really hard for Joe to police this.
Well, the thing is, it's the way we've been policing it before. It's not based on Joe policing it.
Yeah,
it's on the neighbors coming in and saying, hey, this guy's
enforcement.
making a ton of noise.
Right.
So, it's not really making it change from what we're doing. The only things, this is actually tightening it up. It's actually making it more restrictive than what we've been doing, the way the code's written. And the few amendments that are proposed in this area in 5 and 5A would actually just make it so it's a little more reasonable. Adding the line in excess of what would be normally found in a residential location to noise and everything else is basically to keep it from being to the point where before the way the code was none and, or no noise. And the issue with that is that, you know, if somebody's got a business doing something where they occasionally are cutting a piece of wood using a circular saw, that would be a violation. And so you can't, you're completely shutting out certain types of businesses. Whereas, you know, people do that all the time in residential zones. So
I certainly do.
that's the thing of saying that, you know, no, or anything that's in excess of what would normally be found in a residential location would be a violation. So that kind of just makes a little bit more of an even playing field with what is normally going on in residential. As long as you're not exceeding that, you could run a business there. And I think by saying in the given residential zone also applies to, you know, you get a little bit more noise in some places, like out the road in rural residential. People are out there cutting firewood and stuff like that, you know, for their own personal use. It's a little bit more noisy at times, occasionally. You know, you don't get it as much in town. So, you know, you expect it to be quieter where the houses are closer together, and when the houses are spread apart a little bit more, there might be a little more noise from time to time. That's all my comments on that.
What if somebody's babysitting 4 kids?
Mm-hmm.
They got to get a permit?
There's actually a whole child care section
Okay.
in here.
That this 400-foot would not...
No, that's the whole purpose of this whole new code, is you don't have to get a permit anymore.
I know, but and that's why I'm thinking 400 feet is kind of small.
Right. Yeah, it's 20 by 20.
Yeah.
Well, and Liz, there's 2 levels of this, too. So you do have to get a permit.
Yeah, if you are going to have, just as it is now, if you're going to have customers or an employee, you have to go through a type 2, which is that administrative review with notice. So letters would go out to the neighbors, and then we would make an administrative decision on whether to issue the permit. And if anybody was unhappy, they could then appeal that to the Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm. But type 1 is just, you go through a checklist, as I'm correct, and then if they meet the criteria, you issue the permit.
Type 1 is just how we do it now, where if you don't have customers or you don't have an employee, we really don't get involved, and you just need to get a register for sales tax registration, have a business license with the state. At least you should have a business license with the state.
Yeah. Thank you.
When we get to the point where somebody wants a variance because they're going over this number, what are the criteria going to be for that? For issuing that variance?
It's basically the same 3 criteria, if I'm correct, Liz.
I'm trying to figure out how they would meet those criteria.
That's the part that makes it difficult.
Yeah, especially the physical, you know, the one we just had trouble with, how we're...
No, I understand. I mean, you know,
So-
525 square feet is larger than most rooms, right?
I'm just thinking of the occasional
Yeah, no,
person.
yeah,
that
yeah, right,
might
yeah.
need-
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to see a bunch of 500 square foot businesses in all the houses either. I mean,
Right. Yeah, 525 square feet, that's, you know, that's as big as a lot of tiny houses are. So, I mean, you know, I guess my thought on this has been that if you're going to do a commercial activity, you know, you should do it in a commercial area. You know, if you're going to have a business, if you're going to do a home occupational business, that's fine, but it should not be, you know, maybe it would be more reasonable if you have a 800 square foot house, maybe 525 square feet is not dedicated to home occupation business isn't exactly appropriate versus if you have a 4,000 square foot house and maybe 400 square foot isn't necessarily appropriate. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, when you get into situations where you've got people who have a bigger piece of property and potentially for their business, even though it's a business, it's not going to be a business that's going to bother anybody else, you still probably could use, you could probably allow additional space, is my concerns there.
I'm just thinking hypothetically, we're talking about, you know, especially when you talk about auto repair, boat repair.
Yeah.
You're going to eat up that space really fast.
Yeah.
2 cars in a garage takes up all your space.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, I mean, even at 500 square feet, you're not going to be doing anything major. You don't. That's not a lot of square footage. And again, with the noise restrictions and everything else, and everything has to be done inside a closed building. You know, there's a lot of parts of this code that make it so that there's very limited impact that's possible to your neighbors.
I guess the question is, what is the intent? Or is the intent to allow this, some home occupations or businesses or not? Because I think if you restrict it down too much, it's not allowing it.
Well, and
when it comes to time to get a variance, it's going to be really hard to really do it.
Well, and it also sets a very high bar for people who are getting into business to reach, because if you have to go out and either lease or buy some property to run your business on, as well as have a place to live, then you're going to be in a situation where it's very expensive to get into business, and unless you've got a bunch of money, you can't start a business. So it's a concern, and especially when we're in a community where, again, it's a limited market. You don't have a lot of customers. So
I'm ready to vote.
Yeah. Question?
All right.
Dave?
Yes.
Which one are we voting on, by the way?
5.
5.
The 525 to 400.
Okay.
Sally?
Yes.
Nancy?
No.
Otis?
No.
Richard?
No.
Chris?
No.
Now what happens? Does it go back to 525?
Yeah.
Never left
Just
it.
stays there.
Now we can do 5A.
5A.
Since we already had all that discussion. I move to approve Amendment 5A.
I'll second it.
This scales it just like I think it should be scaled.
Based on lot size.
It's scaled based on lot size. So anything,
And it still restricts it to normal residential noise levels.
But it also allows noise beyond property line. I mean, a couple of
it allows noise beyond the property line, but it's at what would be normal for a residential neighborhood. So,
My only problem with it is it's ambiguous. What is normal residential noise? You know, and then,
Yeah.
and what constitutes minor auto boat repair? Are we, you know, it just seems like to me we're creating ourselves an area to discuss in the future.
well,
What's minor to me is big deal to somebody else, maybe.
Yeah.
but anything that's too obnoxious is going, it has to be fully enclosed in an enclosed building. It has to not make a substantial amount of noise beyond the property lines. They can't have any outside storage of anything. You know, there are a limited number of trips per day to the property. There's substantial limitations on this. So you're not going to be hauling a great big boat and sticking it in a 500 square foot garage. to work on it. That's not going to happen. It's more likely somebody's going to be working on parts of a boat in a garage, things of that nature. It's not going to be something where they're going to be making lots of noise. Otherwise, the neighbors will be complaining, and then it'll be an enforcement issue. So, and
Well, that's my question. What is considered normal residential noise?
My neighbor repairs small boat engines in the summertime. It's very noisy, sometimes till 10 o'clock at night. But I think of it as summertime noise, just like the airplanes going over. And it, it kind of cures it for me, because he doesn't do it for 8 months of the year.
yeah, so. I could see it as examples of somebody doing wood carving in their garage, and occasionally they're going to run some power tools in the process of doing that. Most of us can be pretty quiet what they're doing. That would be under, if you have no noise at the property line, that would be a prohibited use.
Of course, this is just boat and auto repair.
No, we're talking noise to any business. The boat and auto repair was just another line that was thrown in there.
Okay.
So, because it said major boat and auto repair is prohibited.
Yeah.
It's only minor that is.
And this is occupation besides, not fixing your own car. You got a flat tire, you got to jack it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is only for the home occupation,
Okay.
Yeah, this is somebody that actually goes out and gets a business license and registered with the city to pay sales tax, and they're advertising that, I fix chainsaw motors, or I fix outboard motors, or I fix, vehicles.
Oil changes or something.
Yeah.
So, personally, I think it's too ambiguous to enforce, and that's been the problem with our existing code, is it's not specific enough. And
but I think what we've got proposed in the existing code is too restrictive. And it's going to take situations where people do things that, they're doing them right now, and if they can't get permission to do this and run a home occupation, they're just going to do it anyway and just not get a business license and not pay taxes. So.
Yeah, I think generally most people want to follow the law.
Yeah. And I think if we make the law so that they can, fit in, and most people are, of course, are going to try to work with their neighbors and not be obnoxious to them.
Then you get neighbors.
Otherwise, we're writing the code for the exception. We're writing the code for those few people who are going to be out there are going to be just absolutely obnoxious. And we're going to restrict it for everybody else just because of a few bad apples. So.
Well, quite personally, I wouldn't want to live next door to somebody that was doing a woodworking shop and had a planer running.
And that would
10 or 11 o'clock at night.
That would be the exception, and that would be outside of what would be normally going on in that neighborhood.
And I don't want to be living next to somebody that's cutting firewood, and has a log splitter, going until 10 o'clock at night either. Yeah. It's okay if they're doing it for themselves because they're not going to be doing it all the time.
Right.
Yep.
But if you're doing a home occupation business, it is a business, you're going to be doing it for.
But then that would exceed what would be normal for residential use.
Yeah, but how do you decide who's going to make that call? Are we going to have, that's going to be difficult to enforce.
Isn't it in the home occupation that all the home occupation work needs to be done inside the building?
Yeah,
it has to be done inside a building.
A log splitter inside their garage.
Correct.
There is an exception, but
correct.
Typically that is not going to happen.
That's correct.
Plus, I think the neighbors have some recourse, too. Things have changed since they got that original letter, requesting the variance or a variance. They could come back to this body.
In home occupations, these permits are only valid for 5 years, and then they have to reapply.
They go with the person, not the property, too.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and there's a whole list of reasons why they would expire that's listed in here. So, Liz, what would be somebody's recourse?
Generally, they come and complain, and then we would investigate as best we could. We would be able to revoke the permit, and then whoever had the permit could appeal, and then they would come to the Planning Commission. I don't think that neither Joe or I are going to make a call about what is considered excessive noise. I think that's going to come to the Planning Commission, you know.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Chris?
Yes.
Dave?
No.
Sally?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Yancy?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to 6, lower the minimum size for manufactured dwellings allowed on single-family lots. Rural residential, rural low density, rural medium density, from 1,000 square feet to 650 square feet.
I move to approve amendment number 6.
Second?
Discussion.
I note that I don't like it for medium density residential. I think it's okay for RL and RR districts.
Well, and I think we can cover that in the tiny homes. So if we allow the tiny homes to be constructed off-site and then brought on-site and put on a permanent foundation, then that kind of addresses that issue. What do you guys think?
I felt that in medium density residential, that's where we're attempting to increase density.
Mm.
And so just being a little bit more liberal in our criteria that allows for stuff should encourage some of that extra density. And so holding it the minimum to 1,000, I think, is more restrictive than holding it to 650. And so that's where I feel that medium density residential should be 650 instead of the 1,000. The light density residential and rural residential, that's not such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to increase density in light and rural residential.
Question. Tiny homes are limited only to 400 square feet?
Yes, I believe so.
Excluding the loft area.
Right.
Excluding the loft area. So it's the footprint.
So my suggestion, isn't there then a gap from 400 square feet to 1,000 square feet? And there are manufactured home models out there that are very attractive, the 650 square feet range, for instance. And it would allow a little more versatility to meet our housing demands, or low-income housing, especially for senior housing.
So can I amend the...
And so what's the reason for limiting it to 1,000 square feet?
I believe that has to do with the nature of and correct me if I'm wrong, they're supposed to be the modular type, there's multiple section or something?
Right, so because we're introducing these into an area where we haven't ever allowed manufactured homes before, we set some standards to try and have them fit in with stick-built residential. The 1,000 square foot, and also the other requirement is that they be multi-sectional. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you can find a multi-sectional 650 square foot home. So if you're saying you don't really, you don't want any kind of standards in those residential districts to try and kind of fit in with what's existing there, then drop the size and let anything into those residential areas. But since this is relatively new idea, our recommendation is to be somewhat conservative at the outset when you're first allowing these different types of housing units into existing residential neighborhoods, and try to do what you can to maintain the current character of those residential neighborhoods. So that's why the 1,000 square feet, and that's why the multi-sectional.
So, thank you, Liz, for that clarification. So, could somebody do a smaller one with a variance?
Possible, but I think it would be difficult to meet that that variance criteria, you know? Let me double check and see if we're allowing, some standards have like specifically variance language built in and some don't, so let me look really quick here.
Because that makes sense, general rule of thumb, 1,000 square foot, but I don't want to prohibit a smaller structure just because we're choosing an arbitrary number of 1,000.
I personally like cottage-sized houses.
So it's really just limited, but you realize it's just limited to manufactured homes?
Yes.
Right? Okay. So no, there isn't a provision to veer from that 1,000-foot and multi-sectional.
Okay, and then can I make an amendment to this amendment? Okay, I move to amend this amendment to reduce the square footage size for medium density residential to 650 square foot and leave the rest at, I'm not really sure how to word that. I want to limit it specifically to medium.
Yeah, you just wanted to apply in that medium density.
Just apply the lowering to
The medium density district.
and not to rural residential or
Yes.
rural low
Yeah.
density.
So basically, you would just delete out that rural residential and the low density residential, and keep the RM. Yeah.
Any further discussion?
Do we
I
get a
think that
second?
needs a second.
I'll second
Oh, yeah.
that.
I like that amendment better than what it is.
Oh, I did. I did do it out loud. You're welcome. I don't talk very loud.
So we need a vote on the amendment.
Vote on the initial amendment.
The amendment to the amendment?
The amendment on the amendment.
The amendment on the amendment, okay. So it's a vote on the amendment on the amendment.
Yancy?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
And Sally?
Yes.
Ready to vote on that?
The vote is, this is on as amended, right? Okay.
All right. Otis?
Yes.
Yancy?
Yes.
Sally?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Okay.
Gotta go, folks. Thank you for all the work you're putting into this.
Thank you,
I
John.
hope you continue the meeting so I can attend.
Do you want
We might be here next week, John.
We might still be here.
Really?
I gotta go for the time.
No, maybe it's okay.
Okay.
Ask us, no?
And it's cold.
6A specifies tiny house dwellings may be constructed off-site. That's just if somebody wants to be able to build them in a shop here in the borough and haul them and install them on a permanent foundation.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I think it's a great idea.
Me too. Yippee.
Aaron?
Richard?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Yancy?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Sally?
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Okay, allow detached ADU to be up to 40 to 80% of the primary dwelling depending on lot size, but still cannot exceed 800 square feet of floor area. This is on 7.
6A.
We already did 6A.
ADU, what's that?
7.
Auxiliary dwelling.
Accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
I still agree with 6A.
Good.
Just making sure that's clear.
Yeah. We have a motion.
This one was mine, so I move to accept this amendment.
I'll second that.
Discussion. I think we've already covered discussion on this one pretty well, so.
We discussed it in the last meeting.
Aaron?
Yancy,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Number 8, increase caretaker dwelling from 650 square feet to 750 square feet. We also have a request to increase it to 1,200 square feet.
Whoa.
So I move to approve amendment number 8.
I'll second it as long as we don't have to do the 1,200 square feet one.
Discussion. 1,200, I think, is
I think
substantially too big.
I agree.
I think 750 is enough.
It's pretty big.
I think 750 is very reasonable.
Call the question.
Sally,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Yancy,
Yes.
Otis.
Yes.
Okay. Allow industrial residents in general industry district with restrictions set by planning commission. Do we have a motion? Hearing no motion, let's move on. Standards for accessory structures in residential districts. 10, and then we also have 10A, which is an amended version of 10.
I move to approve amendment number 10.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
My notes were, it needs to exclude the accessory dwelling units. It doesn't appear to do that, from as far as I can tell.
That was my question, too, on Amendment 7.
This is on, so you're saying exclude the accessory dwelling units?
From the 1,500 square foot cumulative size limit. There's already restrictions on the size of accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
So,
Well, this is accessory buildings, and if you look at it, what this does, if you look at 10A, it keeps somebody from building, say, a 1,700 square foot accessory building, or a 1,500 square foot accessory building on a 5,000 square foot lot, and then having 250 square feet left for their dwelling. So, that's kind of tries to scale the size of the accessory buildings and still leave enough space reserved for the primary dwelling, is what 10A does. Where 10 would not do that. If you had a 5,000 square foot lot and you put a 1,500 square foot warehouse on there, you could build a 250 square foot dwelling. And
on a 5,000 square foot lot, though, you're already going to be
that'd be right at 35%.
Yeah.
If you did 1,750 is
and
35%.
you couldn't do the other first because you have to have the residents first.
Right. But that's the thing, is what this does is it scales it down, so on a 5,000 square foot lot, you could put a 750 square foot dwelling and 1,000 square foot in accessory buildings. But it primarily allows you to, keeps the buildings, keeps it in scale, so you're not having these huge warehouses and tiny dwellings.
We have right now up in Holston's.
So.
And crossing the museum.
So, discussion. Anybody else?
It's industrial, I think.
Crossing the museum, it's residential.
Is it?
What do you-
Across from the museum's.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah, I think it is.
Dave, do you have any thoughts on this?
Industrial.
No,
Yeah,
I
you're right.
I like 10. That's what we're talking about right now, right?
10 is 1,500 square feet,
Total.
but that doesn't scale with property size.
Right, okay, I see.
So,
Yeah.
You
I really like
go out where you
scaling.
got 3 acres and you're still only allowed 1,500
You
square
like
feet
10
of
over 10A?
accessory
I
building.
like 10A over 10. I really like scaling stuff up with lot size instead of holding a giant lot applicable to the same exact building size limits as a tiny lot.
So what happens if I have a 5-acre lot and then I build, that would allow me to build what size of unit then?
A 5-acre lot, you're limited by the 35% coverage.
Yeah, but then what happens if I wanted to subdivide that lot? I wouldn't be able to, right? How would that work?
You mean after you built your?
I mean,
Liz?
how does that work if we approve this and you're allowed to build up to X number of square feet of accessory dwellings, and then let's say you want to subdivide that lot?
Well, it's accessory buildings, not accessory dwellings.
Yeah, accessory structures.
Yeah.
Then what happens, then you wouldn't be allowed to subdivide it if you had a large lot.
Yeah, I think the code prohibits you from allowing a subdivision if it results in a violation of the code.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, then
So-
I'm good with it.
I
did-
think, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You're thinking somebody would build a big warehouse and then just subdivide off that parcel with the warehouse on it?
I'm sure sooner or later somebody will.
Well, yeah.
Somebody tried that. Yeah, okay.
I think.
Well, just so these guys are clear, when somebody comes in with a building permit and they want to build up to their, they got a large lot, a subdividable type lot, and they want to build a lot of accessory structures, just say, yeah, but you understand that if you build X number of square feet on this lot, you have to leave this lot intact. You won't ever be able to subdivide it unless
Right.
you tear down some of your accessory structures.
Unless the accessory structures fall under the 35% for what they subdivide, you still have to stay within the 35%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you're going to have
When you
setbacks.
subdivide it,
Right.
but then you have to stay within their code requirements and setbacks.
Karen?
Yeah, that's going to cause problems if you go to subdivide as well.
Liz?
Oh, I was just thinking about if you subdivided and just subdivided out the accessory building without the residents, then that accessory building is in violation of zoning code, and whether we would allow that to,
Well, I was thinking if you had a 1 acre
Occur.
lot,
yeah, I
and
mean,
you built your structures up to what we're talking about passing here, and then you want to create a half-acre lot that doesn't have any buildings on it. Say you want to sell it to your kid or something, then that wouldn't be allowed, right?
Because it'd be over the one lot.
because you'd be over the 35%. So probably what we would do, more than likely, is encourage them to apply for a variance simultaneously, and then it would be up to the commission to decide whether to grant that variance for the lot coverage and allow the subdivision to occur.
Okay.
Okay? I think that's probably as I think through the issue, that's probably what we would recommend someone do.
Conflicted.
Because it's basically, if you read the code on that 10A, it's based on a percentage of total lot area is what your accessory buildings are allowed.
Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
it's,
About 35% of 40,000 square feet is 14,000 square feet.
well, it's, what happens is when you get to that, it doesn't change anything from the existing code. You're allowed 35% lot coverage when you go over 40,000 square feet. The only difference is there's really no rationale to start limiting the size of the accessory structures at that point, because if you're saying you're going to hold it to a certain percentage, you're into a house that's like 7,000 square feet. It gets kind of ridiculous. So,
Or you have lots of little buildings.
yeah, you could have lots of little buildings, but your house, the percentage that would be reserved for your house would be for a huge house, and there's, nobody's going to build anything that big, so, anyway.
So,
Complicated.
So do we have a motion for 10 on the table right now?
But if you want to support 10A, you should no on 10 and then
No,
yes on
right.
10A.
Right.
I'm a chance that the 10A passes.
Or do we want to amend, have a vote to amend 10 with the language of 10A? How do we do that?
Why don't you just withdraw 10 and then make the motion for what you actually want to vote on?
Draw.
and as a second, I'll withdraw.
Yeah, I make a motion that we adopt 10A then.
I second.
Can I make a recommendation? I heard you guys talking about making sure we don't include accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you say, add some intent language, and I'll put something in making sure that we are not including accessory dwelling units in that accessory structure, unless you want to. But we already have standards for that and size limits, and so it seems like.
Yeah, and that's why I want that included in there. I moved to amend 10A to include language to...
Just include it in your motion in that way, if that's okay with Sally.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll include it.
Yeah.
And I'll second.
So that when we're calculating the size limit of an accessory structure, we're not going to include accessory dwelling unit, right?
So accessory dwelling counts as the dwelling portion.
Exactly. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Just so everybody's clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's not my intent. I want to encourage people to live on the lot, not to build giant garages.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
So.
Because it's a residential lot.
Right.
Correct.
Karen?
Otis,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Before we move on, does anybody want to take a break?
Yeah, I'd like to thaw my hands out.
Could we even propose another meeting? We're not even on the first page.
We're almost done with the first page.
And we don't go down all the way to
Still
the bottom.
daylight.
Second.
2:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we go home.
Go take a nap.
You want to take 5 minutes?
Oh, sure.
You want to stay in your accessory dwelling?
No. No, I have.
Must be topless.
No, I'm low back. Somebody back.
Okay, we're going. We're on 11.
All right, 11, Market Gardens in the Commercial District. We have a motion. Richard?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I don't want to restrict Susie Burrell from any of her operations downtown. And
We got one out at Patky's too, don't we?
yeah, but
That's actually an industrial zone.
where Susie is, okay,
That's why it's allowed there.
okay.
So, do we want to include language to restrict marijuana cultivation in Market Gardens?
I'm hesitant to want to include that because the state regulations on where you can grow marijuana are already really restrictive. And so I don't see the point to adding it to our code when the state's already pretty restrictive on where you can and can't.
Well, I just think it makes it clear because we have it stated in the borough that it's in agriculture is where it's allowed. So if we want to keep market gardens as market gardens,
We could put, provides for market gardens in commercial districts excluding marijuana.
Yeah, I mean, you would put
Yeah.
in excluding,
I mean, it-
does not include marijuana cultivation or excluding
Does not
those.
include marijuana cultivation.
Yeah.
Without clarified, so there's no confusion in the future.
Yep.
So has anybody made a motion?
we have a motion on the original market gardens. Do we have a motion to amend?
Yeah, I make a motion to amend that we add language, provides for market gardens in commercial districts excluding commercial cultivation of marijuana.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
Karen? This is the question on the amendment.
Okay, Chris,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Richard,
No.
and Dave.
Yes.
And then on the original 11, market gardens in a commercial district, as amended.
Sally,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes, even though I disagree with the marijuana portion.
and Otis.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to number 12, market gardens in rural residential district. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I will admit it is kind of redundant because we do allow agricultural and rural residential, so.
Kind of already.
All we're doing is you can't work all night and bother your neighbors, I guess, huh?
So,
You don't have to have a house there.
And you have to also understand that anybody that's going to be a successful gardener is going to be inside a greenhouse or a building.
up here, yes.
Yes. You're not going to be having people out plowing their fields.
No.
Bringing the tractor down the
So-
street.
Yeah, the one essential we lack here.
Karen?
Oh. Richard,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Sally.
Yes.
I guess we said we can't have a market garden in a rural residential, or single-family residential.
Well, there is no single-family residential.
Bending.
There's low density.
Okay.
Be-
13.
Or RL, or RL.
Correct floodplain base elevations.
I so move that we approve this.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Chris,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Can I change the subject just a little bit here? I heard on the radio this morning that the city of Sitka is being sued for allowing people to build a house on a hillside that killed people and ruined some houses.
Yep.
We got anything like that around here? The city could get in trouble?
I know, I'm pretty familiar with that, Otis. That's a gnarly situation over there.
Well, yeah, but I'm wondering, is
the
there a way
city-
we can not have a gnarly situation here?
Well, what happened was, it was city land, and they sold it to a contractor, and he sold the lots, and then the lots were getting built on, and then that's when the landslide happened.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And the thing that SICA's having, really grappling with is they had an evaluation come in to see where in their community they're at risk. And it's basically like about 80% of the community. So it's going to be very interesting to see if going forward whether people will even be able to get insurance.
80% of the community is on,
There's so little flatland in Sitka.
Yeah.
Not
They're
really.
not, they're not
And
built
it's
on
all,
Alaska.
yeah, no, so we don't have
Built on rock.
anywhere of a
Side of a
situation
hill.
like they do there.
okay.
Except the mental health trust land.
Well, we've got land out here that people are on that kind of land.
The people were all
Yeah,
up in arms a few years ago
here.
about them wanting to log.
Yeah, and then Gloria and Don's gravel pit had that beautiful slide that just sort of stopped everything.
But it's not city property that was sold to them.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and most of that mental health land is in the trade, so.
If we've zoned it so it can be built on, doesn't that make the city liable?
No.
That
No?
mental health trust land that is in that slide-prone area, that's all going to become Forest Service land.
It's part of the
You can
trade.
still slide,
And the Forest Service isn't going to ever,
yeah.
They don't like the build.
I don't know.
yeah, they're never going to log that because the
I'm not-
landslide risks.
I'm not sure that logging is bad for it, but
I don't think there's anything we can address it in the code, though, at this time. So let's get back on our task of
Number 14?
number 14, insert the historic district overlay map.
I so move.
I second.
Karen?
Yancy,
Yes.
Otis,
yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes. Okay, 15, insert the Main Street district overlay map.
Move to adopt.
We got a motion?
Oh, I'll second.
Discussion? Karen?
Otis,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Yancy,
Yes.
Sally.
Yes.
Moving on to 16, insert a key for district on allowable use tables. We have a motion.
I so move.
Second?
Discussion?
We've got also 16A, so before we
Yeah.
vote, we should probably.
Well, 16A is not,
It's
It's unrelated.
it's different, it's
It's
unrelated.
unrelated. No, all the rest of them have been related.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
This one's different, yeah.
Okay.
Awnings.
Okay.
Karen?
Richard.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yes, no.
Yes.
Yancy,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
and Chris.
Yes. 16A, exempt Singley Alley from Main Street awning standard.
So moved.
Really?
What in the world does that mean?
It has to do with the fact that there's very narrow sidewalks in a lot of Singley Alley, and putting an awning over those would be kind of ridiculous.
Besides, where would they hang their flags?
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Discussion?
It's a good idea.
Karen?
Richard,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Yancy,
Yes.
Otis.
Yes.
17, expand public notice requirement for type 2 administrative review with notice. Includes publication on Borough Web and in the newspaper.
I so moved.
Second? Richard, you can take it.
Oh, then second.
This isn't in already?
We actually don't have this type of review currently in our code, so it's a brand-new
You
type.
just do it, huh?
No.
Without being, well, I read the notices in the paper.
Well, this is a new portion of the code, and it was not listed in the wording of the code.
Okay.
So we're adding it to make sure the notifications go out. Any further discussion? Aaron?
Sally,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes.
Moving on to 18, waive the 4.3.040 pre-planning for large-scale sites in general industry district. Do we have a motion?
I so move. Or do we want to just leave it out? I don't know.
I'm not going to second it.
Okay, well, that'll stop it.
Hearing no second, we'll move on. Accept title report from Alaska Department of Natural Resources and U.S. Bureau of Land Management.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
What are they really saying?
Liz?
So we're going to require basically a title report that tells us who owns the property. We've had a couple of occasions where property has changed hands in the middle of us subdividing it, and then suddenly the signatures that are on the approved plat do not match up with the deed, which is bad, right? So to avoid that happening in the future, we'll ask for a certificate to plat. It's like a couple $100, so it does add a little bit of a cost to it. But then we are assured that anyone that actually has interest in the property is notified and signs the plat that, yeah, they're agreeing to it being changed or subdivided. Usually that's handled by a title company. For mental health trust land, the title reports are usually issued by the Department of Natural Resources, and so we want to just acknowledge that we'll accept that as a valid title report for subdividing. And the same thing with Bureau of Land Management.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Karen?
Nancy,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes. Number 20, amend the valid dates for submission of certificate to plat from 90 to 28 for preliminary plat and 90 to 7 for final plat.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Karen?
Otis,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes. Okay,
On one page.
21, waive the requirement for 2 or 5-foot contour mapping for lots larger than 20 acres.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Chris,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Otis.
I got a question. Does this make it go to 20-foot contours, or what does it do? Just eliminates contours?
It does, it would eliminate contours, yeah.
Eliminates all.
Unless the ground slope is greater than 10%, and then you'd have the 10-foot contours.
Okay.
And your vote?
Yes.
Okay, 21A, specify the source of information for anadromous streams and lakes.
Again, we should correct the spelling on that one.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have a motion?
I move to approve 21A.
Second.
Discussion?
What does this do? I know I've seen
Liz?
places that you can't develop because you've got a salmon stream, and looks to me like there's maybe 4 salmon come up there and they don't have any breeding success anyway, but you can't log there or...
I have one on my property.
So, in another part of the code, it has a requirement for a 10-foot easement on anadromous streams, or up to 20 feet if the commission wants it to be 20 feet. The way it was written before, it just basically said it was up to the surveyor to identify it, whether these streams were anadromous or not. And this just says, just use the anadromous waters catalog. If it's listed in the anadromous waters catalog, put it on the plat and identify it. And then when we do the subdivision, the planning commission has the authority to establish an easement. I think it's a minimum 10 foot, and then could be wider if they decide it should be wider. Currently,
What concerns me is...
Currently in our code, we're supposed to put a 10-foot wide easement on all streams when we subdivide in a major subdivision. So it's fairly consistent. I'm just adding the anadromous part and giving the option to increase that buffer on anadromous streams.
I guess the problem I've seen, and I don't know if this applies or not, but you've got a stream that has fish down below the road, but none above the road, and then you can't do anything above the road even, and maybe a very expensive bridge instead of...
Only to find out that the road was built right on the fish barrier.
Yeah.
I've seen the Forest Service put in expensive bridges on streams that there's no way fish could have swam up because the road was built right on top of the barrier.
Well, that's where the road normally goes.
It doesn't have any effect on road building. What it has is a requirement for an easement alongside of it so that you couldn't build up to the stream bank.
This is just, we're addressing just residential property, and well, not residential, but all borough-owned property, privately owned property in the...
Yeah, it's going to be
It's not-
borough-wide. It wouldn't matter
Doesn't have
if
anything to do with
it's...
the Forest Service.
No, it wouldn't matter if it's private or public, like it would apply
Yeah.
to the trust.
Yeah.
You know?
So, okay.
Yep.
And this amendment is just defining where we get that information from.
Right.
Yep.
It's not changing it, no matter how you voted on this, it
Yeah.
would change whether,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
I guess I've
That would be
seen,
another different amendment
Yeah.
if you want to
Yeah.
change that. Yeah.
I've seen it change based on who looks at it, though. Yeah. I guess I agree with it, but
Any further discussion?
not for me.
Richard?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Nancy? Dave?
Yes.
Sally?
Yes.
22, delete other information as deemed necessary by the planning official for review of the application. Language from, what section of the code is this? There's not a, I don't,
It's page 44, section 4, page 37. It's right
Okay.
below that anadromous streams.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay. We have a motion.
So moved.
I second.
Discussion.
My notes say I agree with this statement deemed reasonably necessary. Or could insert language such as deemed reasonably necessary. I agree with that portion of that.
That would just be adding one word to the original,
Yeah.
the
So
reasonably part. I mean, we would all hope that that would be.
I would hope, yeah.
Yeah, but one person's definition of reasonable and the other party's definition sometimes, you know,
Right.
isn't.
You can have it.
I mean, I mean, and this is basically for these guys when they're talking about dealing with state agencies.
That's what I'm thinking about, but, you know, the concern is that, you know, we could ask for, I think the example they used is how does the plat affect climate change? And I would say that's unreasonable, you know, to ask that question. And
there is, if we were to insert reasonably necessary, there is a avenue if they wish to appeal it.
yeah, and if you don't insert reasonably necessary, there's still an avenue for them to appeal it. So
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's you know.
either way, you know,
Yeah.
if it makes everyone feel better to put reasonably in there, that's great. And if,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really change much. Yeah.
I'm not going to go so far as to even amend the amendment. to have that
Staff
word.
didn't recommend it at all.
So,
Any further discussion?
Sally,
No.
Otis,
No.
Richard,
no.
Chris,
No.
Dave,
No.
Nancy.
No.
Number 23, waive the requirement for public improvements on major subdivision in general industrial district. Motion? Hearing none, let's move on. 24, extend the time period to submit the final plat for signatures from 60 days to 1 year. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Otis,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
25, delete the requirement for borough to review, sign record of survey prior to recording.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Nancy,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes. Adjust variance criteria.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I had something to say about
Yes.
that. Let me just find it. Hold on a second. So these are slightly different than what we currently have, and I just want to make sure that they mean something to all of you, you know, when you're reading them. And you could perhaps visualize examples of things that would or would not apply, you know, if it's clear enough. I know it's difficult to sometimes apply very broad criteria, and so I'm hoping these changes, you know, kind of add a little bit more information about what we're talking about with those. And so the current code does put the burden of proof on the applicant, and so it's retaining that and just specifying it, even though I think that basically goes without saying. You know, it's really for them to show that they do meet the criteria. And then having specific examples in that, would you rather not have examples of what those criteria are?
I like having the examples in there.
Okay.
I like them too.
Okay.
But I would also include like Grotto.
Nice one, Richard, nice one.
So how would that help us in our situation with the grotto today? Explain that.
If it would have been said.
It really would not have.
It would have, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think in that case, it's one of those cases where I think, yeah, there's an accentuating sort of circumstance here where this has already been built in a way that maybe should never have been allowed to be built where it was in the first place, but that's a done deal, and that's, it is what it is now. And so, I mean, generally I'm sort of in the back rolling my eyes, but this time I feel like, yeah, it was the right variant. It was the right thing to do, even though it didn't exactly fit into those criteria.
In reality, what should have happened or should happen in a case like this is the applicant should come in with the findings of fact of why they're...
Yes.
And we shouldn't be having to come up with the findings of fact. It should be on the applicant.
Yeah, and the application asks them to explain all those things, but rarely do they actually, do that. I think that's part of the commission's role, too, is to ask the applicant, well, tell us, how does this actually meet that requirement? What is that physical constraint?
Yeah, the pole barn was a good example, a recent pole barn that we postponed it to the next meeting because we didn't have those, and the property owner wasn't here to describe it and help us with the wording of it.
Well, my question is, okay, we barely understand the process. How can we expect the public to be able to detail it? I mean, that's the thing I struggle with all the time on the variances is that if we have to do the findings of facts on a variance, they're difficult. So, I mean, the main guidance that I use is if the neighbors object, then I'm less likely to grant that person a variance. If there's objections, like if the next door neighbor says, well, this is going to really impact me and my property, I'm less inclined to do that. But it seems like a lot of times when we're looking at it and we're trying to find the findings of fact, well, no, it's really hard to find them.
Yeah, and that should be an indicator to you that maybe it doesn't meet the criteria.
Well, yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
And that would, so then basically what that would do, that would negate the need for having a planning and zoning commission, in my mind, because to me it seems like we're the buffer between the regulations and the public. I guess is how I see my role sometimes.
But it's also true enough, but I think you have to remember, too, that you're not authorized to grant the variance unless it actually meets all of the criteria.
That, again, is back to my original dilemma that I've had the entire time I've been here, is understanding that.
I'm telling you that, that's the case.
I guess my request would be if there's any training or if there's anything, I mean, it's...
I don't remember that planning commissioner's handbook I gave you?
Yes, I read that, but it didn't help.
Really? It has
So
like
maybe-
2 pages on examples of variances.
I guess maybe some real-life examples would be a little...
Okay, like the pole barn, that would have been and should have been a no.
Yes.
There was nothing different, extenuating about that lot. It was a
Right.
standard 100 by 100 foot lot. It was totally filled in. It was totally developed. They've never had any issues building it all the way out beyond its coverage, maximum coverage. There's nothing to indicate that they needed a variance except convenience and, how they laid out their lot. I think an extraordinary case is this one, where it really lends itself to wanting to do something about that because you're going to create a greater problem later on. And, this one I felt like was more of a challenge and probably should have been granted even though it doesn't quite meet those criteria. Anytime you have a lot that is substandard in size or a ditch or an easement or a creek, something that's really impacting where you can build, I think is a good candidate for a variance. An odd configuration, like very narrow here, very wide back here, that's really forcing people to put buildings and things in certain places that are not normal. If you had a regular standard lot, is another good one for, a good candidate for a variance. In most places, wetlands would be, but here, obviously, that's normal, not extraordinary in any way. So I wouldn't say that is a characteristic that would be different from most property. A very wide right-of-way, like we have on Sandy Beach Road and out in the highway, where the state came in and really took a big swath from the lots after they were already subdivided, I think is another good indicator. Like, suddenly they lost this big chunk of property on the front that made their lots a lot more narrow. And especially in those cases where they're on the water, so it's not like they can buy more land, the lot behind them or something like that. It's really constrained.
So in other words, back to our last meeting, the one lot where the folks wanted to put their garage and extend it to the utility easement, that would be an example where you could say because of the large right-of-way.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to say, too, generally, Joe and I are, write it all out for you guys, so.
I know, but sometimes it's not enough
I know you don't agree always, but.
Yeah, we don't agree with you, but I guess when you say yes, that's great. And I understand with the new code, we're going to have less of that because, you guys are just going to decide it unless there's objections.
Well, no, I think variances, in general, most of them will probably still come to you, because most of them are probably outside of that threshold where we're going to decide them. There might be the possibility where people will say, well, actually, I really only need so much, and that keeps it inside that threshold. And so we might see a few more of those. But I think most of the ones that are requested are outside that threshold. So I don't know that you'll necessarily get fewer. I think you'll get fewer from the downtown area, but I think you'll still get, a few a year, I would expect. Read our report. All I can say is read our report.
Is there any way you could create a little handout for them on this is what the criteria you have to provide us with?
We do, actually, already, believe it or not. The application includes each one of those criteria and asks them to explain how it meets these criteria. And so we'll do that again.
Okay.
I was wondering, actually, when I was looking at that, maybe highlighting some of the little things on the thing where it says, specifically like differentiates this lot from,
From some other lot.
Just highlight that. I think people read that really, but, what's the physical thing? It says it rains on the grotto and, they're not reading the whole thing through and seeing what's the physical difference between our lot and their lot,
And we can try and think of some questions like maybe in normal language to put in parentheses, like try answering these kinds of questions, so that it helps them.
Or maybe
does that make it a lot clearer for us?
And us too. Honestly, when I read them,
maybe another little paragraph in the thing that says the commission has to find these facts. So if you can provide this information, it will make this smoother.
It'll help you sail through.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
We'll just try and do some work. I'll look around. There's places that have better examples of applications than we do, so I'll see if I can find something.
Where did the criteria come from originally? I'm new to this, so.
This one or the one we have now?
Our criteria for variance, where does that originally come from?
So I don't know where the one we have now comes from.
Okay, that's because we have to meet that criteria.
Yeah.
We can't be, and like you said before, you can't just be the judge up here basically saying, oh, I feel that way. It has to meet this criteria. So I was just wondering where the criteria comes from that we have to meet.
I feel like someone at some time gave a whole bunch of Alaska communities a code, and that a whole bunch of places adopted it, and that's where we got it originally.
But it is our criteria, Petersburg's, not a state criteria.
It's not a state criteria, no.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
It's pretty common. So the one that we have now is basically taken straight out of the model from Small Cities for Oregon. So I didn't change it for us, except that language I just added now, just to give some examples. So I just wanted to make sure you guys are okay with what that's saying, and, you know, if there are anything that's Petersburg specific that you would like to see in there.
I think there's a lot of Petersburg specific.
Well, it has to be broad enough where you
Yeah,
can you
I know.
sort of adjust for that, right? I know, and that sometimes that's what makes it hard to apply when it is so broad.
Any further discussion?
Richard,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Yancy,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Do we have any other potential amendments? Is there anything we're missing, Liz?
Well, one last thing, and it's not necessarily a amendment-worthy thing, but I think I'm going to go through and, for the plating stuff, where it says land division, I think I'm just going to go ahead and change that all to subdivision, because I think it makes more sense to most people. And
Yeah.
land division, I think, is
Sounds
throwing
like
people
a
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just do that universally throughout, and with the expectation that's going to make it a little bit easier for people when they read it, so it doesn't sound like something exotic that they don't know about. So that was the only other thing I had. Oh, and then, so I'm going to send this to the attorney. I'm also having an outside person who has written several zoning codes review this for clarity and perhaps things that unintended consequences. So there'll be some slight variation. I don't think any policy things, but slight variation between what you guys approved and what ends up with the assembly after it goes through the attorney. So just so that we're clear, if there's anything earth-shattering, I'll hope to have it. I think you have a meeting in between the assembly meetings, and so I can have you guys weigh in if there's anything that seems like it's really
Yeah,
contrary
it's
to
our
what.
next meeting is,
April 10th.
April
And
10th.
we're still intending to.
is it the 10th or the 11th?
10th is a Tuesday.
I think we're intending to. You're still intending to have this in front of the assembly on April 2nd.
April 2nd, yeah.
So
Assuming the-
that'll be great because then that's right before the public comment period for the assembly.
Right, so you guys can weigh in on, if there's anything that comes up through the attorney's review and such, I can have it here too. Okay?
I won't be here in person on the 10th.
Nor will I.
I might not be either.
I can.
Yancy?
Probably not.
All right, well,
Well, actually, can't call in, that's right.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
But with Tor, that's 3.
If
Right.
forever comes back.
Or we've never even seen him.
He's back in the country, I think, now,
Is he back in again?
hopefully.
I have no Richard, Dave, Otis, maybe Yancy, maybe. 4, 7.
Yeah, so we won't have a quorum.
I might be here, but it's unlikely. It depends on what happens.
Does moving it
I don't think I would wait.
up or down a week help anybody, or?
I'm definitely gone.
Okay.
I'm definitely gone.
But could we reschedule it to?
That's what I'm asking. Could we push it back a week, or?
I'm out of town until the 8th of April, so
I don't get back until like the 23rd or 24th. So
I leave town on the 4th and back on the 11th.
I'll be back toward the end of April.
So if we push it back a week, we can get Dave, right? On the 17th?
How about the 24th?
17th, 24th, I'll be here.
24th, more likely for me too.
Hey, we'd have one on the 24th and then one on May 8th, so
I'll
like,
be here the 17th to the 20th.
So what does that do for the Borough Assembly meeting?
on the 24th, they're not, that's after their second hearing, second reading, so it's between second and third readings at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, but we can comment as a committee if we need to.
We made it, we can't call it.
Just to clarify, who would be available on the 24th?
Well, I think
Good chance for me.
it looks like I get back in on the ferry that day, but I don't know what time. I'm trying to figure that out right now. And no, I won't be here on the 24th. 11:15 p.m.
You won't be here on the 24th? Okay.
No, I get in that night on the
Okay.
ferry.
So it doesn't help us.
Well, that'd be a Chris, Dave, Sally, and Otis.
Oh, okay.
And maybe
Otis
Tor.
is maybe.
I'm maybe, I gotta check.
Yeah,
And possibly Tor.
possibly Tor.
You got herring pounding or something to do? Yeah.
Well, then I got a wedding too.
Oh.
We still have to vote on recommending.
Oh yeah,
We've got that open,
Oh,
Oh, yeah, better do that. Before we deal with this other thing.
not
We
ready.
almost,
yeah.
that would have been bad.
Just
Yes.
wrap it all.
We've made all these amendments to it.
So any discussion before we call the question?
Good job, Liz. You've done a lot of work.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, you guys. I appreciate all the work you've put into it, too.
And thanks for guiding us through this.
Yes.
I'm sure it's been frustrating.
It's been a joy. It's been a joy.
Yeah, right.
At least we have the grotto.
And we protected the grotto.
The recommendation to the assembly, did we have a motion on that way back when?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a vote.
Yes.
Sally,
Yes.
Otis,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and Yancy.
Yes.
Ready? You're on non-agenda.
Let me get back to the,
I make a motion that we adjourn.
we're just about there.
Okay.
Okay. Non-agenda items. Any commissioner comments? Any staff comments? We have a motion to adjourn.
Second. Dave already made it.
I third it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Someone.
You missed all the fun, Joe.
Wow, you guys are true.
You missed